Hi, everybody. I'm Laura Bowles. I'm the owner of The New Normal, and I'm here with my sixth episode of my Kids in Conflict series. Um, and I don't know if you remember, but in the very beginning, I said that I was going to talk to you about how conflict can be transformative for your relationship with your child. Um, we've been home for 7 weeks now, and I can tell you I've had a lot of opportunities to have transformative experiences with my children. In other words, we've had plenty of conflict and plenty of uh, experiences where we've gotten to go through the cycle of conflict. And sometimes it's gone better than others. So the one that I want to tell you about tonight is one of those times when it didn't feel like it went that well. So this was just a few days ago. We've kind of gotten into this new routine where the kids get up and eat breakfast before us, and then they get to watch the iPad for a little while, and that buys us a little extra sleep in the morning. So the other day, my two kids were fighting over the iPad, and I wanted to stay in bed, and so I yelled down the hall and said, "Stop fighting over the iPad or I'm going to take it away." And they didn't stop fighting. They were screaming at each other. So I was angry and I didn't have much patience, and I walked down the hall and I grabbed the iPad, and they both started crying, and I yelled at them. And it was just a big mess, and I wasn't proud of how I acted. I don't know if this is something that happens to you, but I try to keep composure most of the time, but sometimes that just doesn't happen. So that's the example I wanted to give tonight. I know that probably doesn't sound like it's going to teach you a whole lot, but it's just an example of conflict and a time when I felt like I didn't handle it as my best self, the way that I want to. So with that in mind, what I want to say tonight is that, we spend a lot of time and energy trying to keep our composure and trying to stay calm and, be the adult, but sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes we yell or say something that we wish we didn't say to our kids, and then we wish we could take it back. So what I want to say today is that is normal. That's a human thing that happens, and it doesn't mean that all is lost. It's actually a really great opportunity. It's okay for your kids to see that you're human and that sometimes your emotions get the best of you. We don't want it to happen, but sometimes it does happen, and it happens to your kids too. So it's an opportunity then for them to see, how do you handle it after your emotions have gotten the best of you? How do you work to repair the relationship and to keep your bond strong? So that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. So there's a pattern of conflict in relationships that you might know about. And the way that it goes is relationship, rupture, and repair. And we would love if all relationships stayed in that, building of relationships where you're creating those bonding experiences, and good feelings toward each other. But relationships that are real relationships where they're healthy and strong, they don't always stay in that part. Inevitably there will be conflict and there will be ruptures, times where the two people in the relationship have a conflict that doesn't always feel good. Usually conflict feels pretty uncomfortable. So when a rupture happens, that's when you have an opportunity to repair. And that's where I want to focus tonight. And so I want to talk about, what does repair look like with your children? And there's some specific ways to remember this. So the first step after there's been a rupture, or you and your children have had a conflict and there needs to be some repair, is for you as the parent to regain composure. And what this might look like is going in another room to spend some time by yourself, taking deep breaths, maybe calling somebody to talk through what happened so that, just to have somebody listen to you. Actually, one thing that I did that day after I yelled at my kids and I could feel that there was a lot of tension, my husband was actually in the car because he had to go somewhere for work, and I called him to tell him that I was upset and the kids were upset and I just needed to talk to another adult. And that helped, just to reach out to somebody and have somebody, hear me out. But that's the first step, is to do what you have to do to regain composure. And it's okay for your kids to see you going through that process. Maybe it's telling them, I need to go in another room and take some deep breaths so that I can be calm again. Because again, you're modeling for them what to do after they have experienced an emotional dysregulation where their emotions have gotten the best of them. So once you have regained composure, and the way you know that you've reached that state of composure again and regulation is that you feel ready to connect again with your child. You want to create connection, and you're able to offer positive intent. So that means thinking about your child in the best light, being able to see them as, this person that you love and that you want to connect with, and that is really just trying their best. When you're ready to reconnect with your child again, the first step might be an apology. You are not apologizing for having the emotion. For example, in my situation, it wouldn't be apologizing for being angry or being frustrated. It is apologizing for your behavior. You did something that you wish you didn't do. Again, you're modeling for your child, so they're able to see what an apology looks like. And remember that means to, just keep it simple, state what you are apologizing for, and really resist kind of explaining why you did it, or trying to justify, that the thing that they did wrong is what pushed you over the edge. It's not about that. It's just about saying that you're sorry. So once you've apologized, the first thing you want to do is to show empathy. And you actually want to start with showing empathy for yourself. There's an acronym to remember the process of how you can do this. The acronym is D.N.A. D is for describe. So you're describing what happened without judgment, stating it in a neutral way. And you're saying, in my example, I might say, I yelled at you earlier. N is for naming the emotion that happened. So in my case, I might say, I felt angry. And then the last letter, A, is to acknowledge, and that's to acknowledge what the wish was or what the desire was. So again, in my case, I would say, I was really hoping that I would get to sleep a little bit longer, and that's why I felt upset. And you can keep it really simple, but that's the first step, is just to go through those, the describing, naming, and acknowledging, so that you're able to show empathy for the situation. And then you can continue by showing empathy for your child's situation. So, the describe might be you and your sister were fighting over the iPad. And then naming the emotion, you might say, I think that you were feeling frustrated and angry. And when you're naming the emotion, you want to leave room for the child to correct you, because you might think that it was a certain emotion and it might not be. So you want to kind of say it in a way that is going to allow them to give you more information. And then A would be to acknowledge what their desire was. So again, in this situation, I might say, I know you really wanted the iPad. And by going through that process, you're able to start repairing the relationship and just acknowledging that there was a conflict. You can keep the talking simple. It doesn't have to be a lot of talking, but it's really just the conscious effort of coming back after a conflict and making that connection with your child. This could also include, really just leaving space to listen, to let your child talk about what happened. It might be cuddling, eye contact, physical touch. It depends on your child and, what they need. But I know for some children, that's really important to have that physical touch, where for others, it may just be sitting next to them or close to them, and, maybe side by side works better. But it is about you making the intentional effort to repair after the conflict. So once you have, you've said what you need to say, you've let your child, talk and express what's going on for them, that really sets the stage for problem solving. And you're at the point then where you and your child can talk about and brainstorm ways to handle it better the next time. And that's what's really great about this. Conflict happens, and that's inevitable, and it should be totally a normal thing that we accept as part of our relationships, even though they're uncomfortable. But the great thing is, if you take those steps to reconnect after a conflict, it gives you and your child a way to work together to handle things better in the future. And it can really strengthen your relationship if you come to conflict with that perspective. I know that's a lot of information. I'm also going to include a link for an article from Conscious Discipline, and that really outlines a lot of what I talked about tonight. So to recap, I just want to make sure that you get the main points for tonight. The first thing is that all relationships have conflict, and conflict can be a great opportunity to build those relationships. Relationships usually follow a relationship rupture repair cycle when it comes to conflict, and that's something that you should expect. It's an inevitable part of every healthy relationship. When those ruptures do happen, you can repair by following the D.N.A. acronym to show empathy. And D stands for describe what happened without judgment, name the emotion that was happening, and acknowledge the wish or the desire that the two parties, you and your child, had in the situation. And then finally, you can use those opportunities to problem solve and to figure out better ways to handle it in the future. So in all of this, the message that I want you to get is that conflicts are inevitable. They're part of every relationship, and sometimes we handle them well, sometimes not so well. But you're doing the best you can. This is a stressful situation, and I encourage you to show yourself the grace that you would show a close friend in this kind of situation. This is a stressful time, and your kids are really lucky to have you. So keep up the good work.